I'm Mike,
And I'm Amber. Welcome to the Covenant Chronicles,
where we tell you the truth about relationships.
giving you the tools to build the foundation you always needed. Hello. Welcome back to the Covenant Chronicles.
Why, hello. I feel like my voice is so raspy right now.
It really doesn't sound that different, to be honest.
Okay.
It's just you.
Yeah. It's all in my head.
Yeah.
I'm still dying, y'all, in case you listened to our last podcast. I don't know. I caught some type of crud over here. It's not like a normal sickness, just, dying, I guess. I don't know.
Suppose.
Yeah. I'm over here drinking tea and honey like an old person.
Uh-huh.
It's soothing to my throat.
Everyone caught it except for me. Haha. You're so funny.
I try. On that note, we had mentioned our last podcast talking about right times. How do you know something is the right time? How do you know relationally or relational timelines? And it's funny because this has been on our list for a little while, and it's just one we hadn't gotten to yet. And then within the last couple of weeks here, we were actually asked that question. And the fantastic part about when and where we were asked this question was just the fact of we had an array of married couples in the room at the same time when we were asked the question. So, you, of course, with us, previous marriages or relationships, 15, 18 years. And then now with our new relationship and marriage of a few years. And, then you had another couple that had been 14 going on 15 years and another couple in between. And it was a great way to get, I guess, a variance of perspective, right? And I think everybody there was at different stages of their marriage or different stages or places in their relationship too, which was really cool. And so especially with our last podcast, this just seemed like a really good time to kind of segue into relational timelines and, how do you know it's the right time for any major milestone within the relationship? And a good place for us to start with this is probably talk about our relationship and the timelines that we set and why we set those. And
it's actually funny to talk about that. And I was thinking about this when we were talking about it with everyone, but I'll let you explain this timeline.
Okay.
And he will say that we decided this together. However, there was actually never a we decided this together, more so as you decided this and we just went with it.
Well,
Uh-huh.
You didn't have a rebuttal, so that's a joint decision, right? To be fair, the first part of this, I believe, was a joint discussion we had actually talked about. The second part of it was just kind of yeah, okay, that sounds good.
I mean, kind of.
Okay.
Let's be honest from the very beginning, though. I think there was a conversation that was had probably, I don't know, 2-3 months into us dating. And I was like, are you gonna ask me to be your girlfriend? Is this an official thing, or what are we doing? And you were just kind of well, I just assumed.
Well, we're talking about bigger steps here, but yes, there was that. I just be making assumptions over here, you know what they say. You assume it makes an ass out of you and me, right? That's funny. I actually forgot about that part until you just brought it up. We're just going to brush that under the rug and pretend. That is true, though. We had been dating for a couple months and we were, I guess, as the kids call it nowadays, exclusive. And Yeah, you were like, yo, so what are we doing? Are we just like hanging out? Am I your girlfriend? Whatever. And I was like, oh, well, I just kind of assumed you were my girlfriend. Like, I guess we got to put that label on it, huh?
Yeah, because there was never actually like a, hey, are you gonna be my girlfriend or do you want to be? Like, are we in a relationship?
Well, shouldn't have to tell you these things, babe. You're supposed to be a mind reader. Come on. Isn't that how relationships work?
I guess, except like the whole situationship thing is a thing these days. So I'm
Oh,
like,
well,
is
there is
that
that.
what this is?
Yeah, yeah,
What are we doing?
yeah. Well, now that we've got that out of the way, we can talk about the next step, right? And um y'all are just gonna have to deal with my coughing and my slurping my tea over here. It's gonna be what it is. Um the next step of that was moving in together. And I'm not sure exactly why the 1 year mark was an important mark for me, but it was kind of something that I just predetermined of like, or we had both discussed though, the initial part of, well, if we're going to continue to see each other and we're going to be in a relationship, then it has to be intentional, right? We're not like, if it's going to be casual, because that was part of that conversation when you're like, yo, am I your girlfriend? What are we doing here?
Mm-hmm.
That was part of that conversation was, look, basically, if we're going to be casual, then let's label it that way and let's have that understanding. Or if we're going to be in a relationship, like, we need to be in a relationship because we're not dating to, or at least you at the time, we're not dating to date, right? Like
Yeah.
you were like, I'm dating to find my partner, my soulmate, whatever you want to call it, and that's what I intend to do. So if this is just something casual for you, I understand, it's not for me though. And at that point, though, we had I had basically mentioned, hey, after we've been together for about a year, let's, probably the next progressional step would be moving in together, make sure that we can cohabitate at that point. Right. And what's really funny is thinking back on it, these timelines that we talked about in the beginning actually happened. And a lot of it by not really intentionally being like, oh, well, here's the time clock. Like, let's make this thing, right? Because like, if
Yeah.
you think about it, we got just past a year. We had been together because we got together in March, like middle or end of March when we first started talking.
No, you moved in like beginning of March. So, I mean, technically it wouldn't
Was
have
it a
been
year? Okay.
like right less than a year, but yeah.
Well, so when we first started talking though, it was basically the beginning or middle to end of March.
Yeah.
And then about a year later, the beginning of March, by circumstance, I had to change my living situation. And it was like, okay, I either need to look for another house, and that's where you were kind of like, hey, well, I mean, I have this house. Technically, it's not ideal, but like we can make it work for, all the children's. And why don't, you move in? And I said, okay, and then we kind of made that leap. And it was funny because I had always kind of made the joke about, okay, well, if we're together after a year, we'll move in together and make sure we can cohabitate. If we make it another year, then at that point, I should probably marry you or stop messing around, one of the two, right? And it's funny because then you get another, was it a year later?
Yeah, I
A
mean,
little
like
more.
3 months after.
Yeah, so it'd be 2 years and a little bit. We get to that place of we go on vacation together, and I was like, well, you'd met some of my family and the important ones, and I'd really only met your mom and stepdad, and that was about it, and we had an opportunity to go visit the rest of your family, so we took it. And it's like, well, I might as well meet the rest of your family, and your sisters and your dad and stepmom and their side of the family, and your aunt and just a bunch of different people in your family. And I had already kind of predetermined before I went on that trip. I mean, we'd started talking about it, and there was kind of like this joke of I think your mom even made a comment about something to the effect of, well, do I need to have a talk with them, or what do you do, or so, something,
Yeah.
you know what I'm talking about. I
Yeah.
don't remember exactly what was said, but it was kind of this thing, and we made a joke and laughed about it, but we kind of had this understanding of like what was coming at this point, and of course I did the traditional. I asked your stepdad and your dad actually, and that was a hilarious experience, asking both of them, to marry you. And just for the record, I got yes from both of them. So,
Yes, you're good.
and then, we move along, and it was, let's see, we come back, we get engaged, and then we basically rode out the summer and the fall. And, just before the holidays, we get married. And, now we're approaching the third year here. And, this is kind of, I guess, long-winded, if you will, which is ironic because I can't breathe with the crap right now. But it's really interesting, right? Because then we followed this, whatever timeline. I don't know how long it was with you and, your ex before you guys dated, got engaged, all that stuff. I mean, for me and my ex-wife, we were together 15 years, but only 7 of that married, right? So I took like 7, 8 years, most women would have been like, I'm out,
I mean, we started dating in high school. You guys did too, but
Sure.
like obviously that's not true. There are people who get married right out of high school, but we were 5 years into dating before we got married. So,
well, and that's, so there's different timelines. And, some of our close friends, like we talk about it all the time, like they met and were married in like 4 months,
yeah.
right? Which is like, to me, I'm like, holy cow. But I guess if you know, right? And it's an interesting topic because, for us, like we took the road that we took, and looking back on it, I would say those mile markers, if you will, were mostly on me. But I also wanted us to work through our crap, and that was one thing that was important. And we did take that time to do that. Right. And we had a lot of stuff we had to dig through that we did, and it was like, we hit, I would say about every 6 months of our relationship, we hit this like little step, if you will, like a step up, right? Of like, okay, a little more, a little more, a little more, and it was like with each new stage, it was like a whole new world in our relationship opened up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And it was just for some weird reason, every 6 months, it's like unlocking a new door to our relationship. And I think for me personally, the biggest pivotal, like downhill slide was probably that like end of year 1, beginning of year 2, when we really dove deep in our faith. Mm-hmm. And a lot of our mindset prior to that shifted.
Yeah.
And when that happened, that was a real big turning point of like, we kept stepping up, we kept stepping up, we kept stepping up. But when we did that, it was like we started skipping up the stairs, right? Yeah. And, when we got asked this question though, and, how do you know what's the, deal? It really got me thinking about the fact that I don't think there is a right time,
yeah,
right? For each person. Now it varies. Yeah. Right. There's not a textbook like, okay, this is perfect. Right. Because think about like our grandparents, right? Like they'd know each other for 3 months or whatever and get married and be married for 50 years, right? Or 60 years or some crazy amount. And it is a different world we live in. And I will say that nowadays, with all the outside influence, what's massively changed is, when people used to get married, it used to mean something. It used to be a covenant, right? There was no plan B. Like, yes, divorce existed, but that wasn't, you know what I mean? Like, short of like crazy abusive situation, like that wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
If you were unhappy, you figured it out and worked through it and grinded through it to where you guys were happy again, right? There was none of this like, oh, I'm just unhappy and, because I fell out of love. And that was one thing that we brought up in this discussion was that love is a choice, right?
Yeah.
Sorry to burst all your bubbles, but this whole version of love that's like fairy tale, it's a feeling, and oh yeah, I'm so in love because I have this feeling and I'm like this high, and when that wears off and we come down to the ground and we become grounded again, oh well, now I'm not in love with them anymore. I should just break up with them or I should leave. That's not how love works, right? that
Yeah.
that feeling that you had, that was a temporary chemical reaction inside your brain. Love is a choice, right? You wake up every day and choose to love your partner, right? It's very much like your walk with faith, right? Like it's we were given choice, right? People always ask that question. This is a huge theological debate or religious debate, if you will, of like, well, if God can do everything, can't he just make us all follow him? He could, but that's not the point, right?
Yeah.
He wants the choice. He wants you to make the choice. And your relationship is the same exact way, in the sense that like when you're going to love somebody and if you make that choice to marry them, you are building a covenant, right? And that covenant is saying, hey, I'm going to choose you when it's hard, when it doesn't seem like I should, when I don't know how I'm going to, I'm still going to choose you.
Yeah. Well, I also think that when we say like love is a choice and you're not gonna like feel it, whatever, like you do. I feel like whenever you are actively making the choice,
Mm-hmm.
that feeling is just there.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you think that you should just feel the feeling and it's not a choice, you're not putting in that effort, that like that actually goes away.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of it. But I do think like actually knowing, um like this is something that we did talk about in that discussion, was actually knowing what marriage and a covenant means to you,
Mm-hmm.
and not just doing it because you think you're supposed to do it.
Right.
Because I think that I think honestly, like if we were honest, that's a big reason that there's so many divorces. Because it's not to say that like people can't get together young and stay together forever, but I do think that we just live in this world where it's like, oh, you just find someone and you get married. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to do that, then you're supposed to have kids, and that's just how it is. But there's not ever this like discussion of what is marriage and what does it actually mean to you? And are you entering into a covenant that actually has meaning to you? Like, do you know what that means? Because I know for me personally, that was not a thought that I ever had when I was younger.
Right.
It was just, well, I found this person and they asked me to marry them, so I guess that's what I'm doing because we're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to, right? But it wasn't this like deep thought out, like, well, marriage actually means this to me, and I'm entering into a covenant, and that means this to me. There was none of that. And I think that was a big part of our personal timeline. I think like we probably could have moved faster or even slower in some ways, but the point was like when we got into our relationship, neither one of us was really sure that we wanted to get married again. So that obviously took time anyways,
Mm-hmm.
to get to a point where we knew that was something that we wanted again. But then even from that point, it really became a, what does this mean to me? Because it means something different to me now. Like actually growing and changing and becoming the person that I want to be, marriage means something different to me than it used to mean. It's a much deeper thing to me than it ever was before.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, we both had to develop what that meant to us before we got to this point of actually getting married.
Mm-hmm.
So I think personally that that's some like a huge factor that should be considered before you get to that point. Now, I'm not saying you can't be like this person that asked this question is like I think he had said they've been dating for like 4 months, but
It was 5 or 6. Either way.
uh,
Yeah.
I thought he said 4, but anyways, he like feels like it's the right time, and I don't think that there is a wrong answer to that. Like if you get to that point and you're only a couple months in, but you feel convicted and sure of, hey, this is what a marriage means to me and I'm going into it with this idea
Mm-hmm.
and this is a covenant, then okay, you
Yeah.
know. But if you're like 2 months in and you're like, I kind of like this person. Like, let's just do this
Yeah.
with no real like idea of what it actually means, then I think there's a potential that down the road there's going to be issues because of that.
I think that's the telltale factor, right? Of well, when's the right time? The right time is when you can define what a covenant means to you. Your partner can do the same, and you guys are on the same page.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because at the end of the day, if you guys aren't on the same page with what covenant means, right, that's where the breakdown is going to come, right? And we've talked about this before. We've talked about handling finances. There's no right answer. We've talked about, politics inside of a relationship. There's no right answer, right? Even differences in religions, right? I mean, when my parents got together, they were, my mom was Catholic, my dad was Christian, right? And over the years, like that has melded together.
Mm-hmm.
And so I believe it is important in some ways to be on the same page, right? And, you have to be somewhat going in the same direction on important topics, right? And by that, I mean the important ones. And let me be really clear. I will say right here, and a lot of people are going to disagree, politics do not matter. And everybody's going to be like, oh, well, here's why. If you feel so strongly about politics, you are the problem. Because it doesn't matter what side of the fence that you stand on. If you let that run your entire life, you're part of the problem, right?
Well, and
So,
even honestly, with you want to go into the politics thing, I feel like if you're with the right person, it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, if you're on the same page about things, you're going to end up at a similar viewpoint with things no matter what.
that's my point. Like you can be conservative and liberal or whatever have you, or you can both be liberal, both be conservative, right? At the end of the day, if you are seeking your truth, right, that stuff will iron itself out. And the reason why I say that with politics is because like if it is that hot of a topic in your household, you need to look at your career and look at your hobbies because neither of them are the way they should be if politics are that big to you, right? So with religion, right, if you are truly seeking God, you are seeking his truth, and regardless of the denomination that you are, you will, God will reveal what he wants you to see if you are continuing to seek his truth, right?
Yeah.
So I don't care if you're Jewish, Christian, Catholic, whatever, right? Now, this is where there's a little bit of a defining factor of some of these topics, right? You do have to have similar paths that you're on. And what I mean by that is if one of you goes to, let's just say you're Christian or non-denomination, and you are in church every Sunday and you belong to a small group and you volunteer and you do, and your faith is really important to you, and you're with somebody that's into witchcraft and all that stuff, that's a different subject, right? You're probably not going to work out, right?
Yeah, that might be an issue.
Right. But if you're both religious and your faith is important to you, right? The denominations are not as important as a lot of people make them out to be, right? Because if you love that person and you're making that choice to love that person and you both are seeking, right, you will find.
Yeah.
Same thing with politics, right? If one of you goes to all these crazy, let's say, one of you is diehard conservative, you've got all the MAGA gear and all the Trump stuff, and you're one of those that is like so far right wing that like you watch every news station, you're so in tune to this. Once again, this goes back to what I said. If you are this involved in politics on either side of the fence, you should probably audit your life, right? And the person you're with is on the flip side, and they're going to a bunch of like liberal rallies and this and that. Like, y'all probably aren't going to be together, right?
Yeah.
And if for some weird reason you are, maybe it's time to audit what you actually believe. Because if you're so far the other way on each side, but yet you can tolerate each other, you probably don't believe as hard as you think you do. And there's been some outside influence that's made you, think that you have to act a certain way. And let's audit how you really feel, right?
Yeah.
Finances, right? People argue, oh, well, we have to, this, that, and the other. Here's the thing, right? We've talked about that. We did a podcast on the finances and how to make that work. Okay, well, there's no right answer there, right? And if both of you are in the same direction, right? Like maybe he believes as the man of the house, he should handle the finances. She believes, well, I'm an accountant, so I'm better at finances. Okay, those are details you can work out. If you love that person, you're making that choice. Part of that is going to be finding compromise and working together and finding the balance in that.
Yeah.
Now, if the flip side is that like one of them spends money like it's going out of style, and they literally are like, I don't need to save a penny because I can't take it with me when I die, and the other hoards money, back to the extremes thing, you might want to have that conversation, right?
Yeah.
But if you're somewhat in the same direction, kids, right? If one of them is like, absolutely not, I will never have kids, no way. And the other's like, I want 10 kids, probably should have that conversation, right? But if one's like, I want one kid, and the other's like, I want 5, you guys will figure out.
Yeah.
You're going to probably end up with 3, right? Like you're going to meet in the middle. It's going to be what it is. You'll love it. Like,
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, there's no right time, but the important thing is, are you guys flowing in the same direction? And do you understand what a covenant is, right? How long you date before you get engaged? There's no right time. How long you date before you move in together? There's no right time.
Yeah.
We did it. There's a lot of people now in our faith now. If our faith was where it was, then we probably would have, handled things completely different, right? Like we probably wouldn't have moved in together before we were married.
No.
But that's just how we
Probably
view
would have gotten married first.
right. But it worked out the way it was supposed to work out.
Yeah.
And we were the one big thing is we were very intentional about forward progress, right? That was the one thing that like we always fought to make forward progress, and it wasn't always easy, and we had to unpack a lot of our past. But as we did, we became closer and closer. Our bond became stronger and stronger. Our intimacy grew, right? And we continued to cultivate this relationship. And that is the point behind this, right? There's no like everybody wants definitive answers in their life, right?
Mhm.
Especially religion. Like that's my favorite one is like when people are like praying for a definitive answer. And then the really funny part is half the time they're going to get it
Yeah.
and they just don't want to hear it or won't listen to it, right? I'm like, what do you want, definition for? You ain't going to listen.
Yeah.
But, relationships are the same way. And there's no 100% fail proof plan of like, well, if you're together for, 3 months or a year or 2 years or 3 years, whatever. What I will say, and this is one thing, I mean, I'm interested to see your opinion on, but I'm a firm believer, though, that if you're waiting years, like we're talking that like 4, 5, 6, 7
Mhm.
plus years to get
Mhm.
engaged, it's probably not going to work out. Because if you
Yeah.
have that much hesitation, it's probably not going to work out.
There was a time in my life that I thought that was a good idea. Just because it was like, well, if you can make it that long together, then like you're probably good. But being on a different mindset and a different like way of seeing like even religion and just now I would not say that that is a good thing, with the caveat of if I'm going to be completely honest, if you're dating super young
Mm.
and thinking about getting married quickly, like that's the time that I'm like, I kind of feel like you should probably be dating for a while before, because
hmm
I just, I don't know. I think that that's,
There's an exception to every rule.
yeah,
Even like I said, I mean, me saying, hey, if you're dating for years and years on end and then you get engaged and married, like, well, whatever, like there's an exception there, right? Even older people, maybe they're working through their crap and like whatever.
yeah,
But the odds are typically not in your favor, right?
yeah.
And same thing with like,
There is a distinction of are you just not getting engaged or married because you have trust issues, because you have a issue with being tied down, like that there's a whole lot of things that go into that.
yeah,
um but I feel like, especially as you get a little bit older, at least by your 30s, like you shouldn't be dating for 5, 6, 7, 8 years before you decide, oh well, maybe I could settle down with this person.
yeah, I'm gonna call the dudes out here, because that's my specialty, and you'd love it because you'd love to pull me back and be like, "Hey, women have their part too." But like, dudes, if you're waiting that long to engage, like get engaged, this whole like, I gotta wait for the right time. I want things to be perfect. Like, make a decision, right?
Well,
Be decisive in your life. Like,
here's I just want to ask this and point it out, because when we got together,
uh,
you very much were in the mindset of like, I'm not doing that again.
huh?
So like in that mindset, what was your mindset that you're like, oh, I'm never gonna ask someone to marry me again?
Well,
You
look
know?
though. I mean, that changed in 2 years. I figured my stuff out. That's my point. Like,
Yeah.
let's be honest. Like, let's go through the rebound, right? Of like, I'm coming just off of losing basically my entire life, right? Like ground zero.
Yeah.
While I dealt with my dad having cancer, who I'm extremely close to, right? And now I'm at like ground zero,
Mm-hmm.
right? And mind you, with a lot of um trust and betrayal issues, right?
Yeah.
Friends, spouse, like everything, right? I mean, to this day, I deal with people who don't know the stuff that happened, and people around me that I was close with who have lied and lied and lied to paint a picture that, quite frankly, is not true, even in the slightest, right?
Yeah.
But you go from that, right? And that's what I'm getting at, and this is why I can say what I say about make a decision, man.
Yeah.
Right? Because I went from absolutely not, I won't get married again, to, okay, let me actually audit why I say this.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I say it because it comes from an emotional place because, well, I'm worried about, the last time I was married, I lost everything in my life all at the same time.
Yeah.
Like, and when I mean everything, I literally mean everything minus my kids and the clothes on my back,
Yeah.
right? And to come from that and say, okay, is that how I truly feel, or is this an emotional state of being? Am I being too emotional about this?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Well, when I got married last time, what did it mean to me? When I start thinking through it, I did it because that was the right choice according to society.
Yeah.
And then, okay, well, what does covenant actually mean to me? Never figured it out.
Mm-hmm.
So then I went through the process of figuring it out, saying, okay, could I build a covenant with somebody again? Yeah, I could if we were on the same page, right? If covenant meant the same thing,
Yeah.
right? And then also having all the stuff of like, you know, you and I have very different views of our previous relationships. Like for me, I'm not like, hey, I shouldn't have got married because my ex-wife's a horrible person. That's not it at all. Neither of us were mature enough, worked on our childhood enough, or like had ourselves even remotely figured out to be in a marriage, let alone trying to be parents.
Yeah.
Right. So to go through and audit myself now and say, well, why would I marry somebody now? Could I do that again? What would that look like? And what would covenant mean to me? I mean, 2 years, right? From, well, 2.5 to 3 by the time we got married, right? But we're talking, you know, from me being like, absolutely not, I wouldn't do that crap again, to us being actually married. And there really was no like, you have to marry me, right?
Yeah.
There was like none of that there. It was more or less like, because, even in the beginning of our relationship, you were kind of on the same page of like, yeah, it wasn't, you were willing to get married again, but not to the full extent of what marriage actually means, right? You're like playing house, switching of names, having a ceremony, but I'm not doing paperwork. I'm not building a covenant, like none of that, right?
Yeah.
And then so even like you going from that to being at a place of like, no, if we're going to do it, we're going to be all in, right? I mean, both of us had that massive shift.
Yeah.
And so that's partially why, and why I have, I guess, the right, if you will, to say what I said about figure your stuff out and be decisive. If you're in high school and you're in a junior in high school, yeah, you shouldn't be thinking about marriage. Like, I'm gonna be honest with you,
Yeah.
especially because, like, yes, some kids nowadays are further ahead than others, but I have yet to meet one that is anywhere near the maturity of like our generation, let alone our parents or our grandparents' generation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And like, not to say they don't exist, but they're pretty far and few between. And the odds are you're not one of them,
Yeah.
right? And so at that point, I mean, that, yeah, if you start dating somebody and you're dating them all through high school and whatever, yeah, get to 18, you know, start your life then, start figuring out who you are, especially if you're a man, figure out who you are and spend a few years doing that. And then you want to get married? Sure.
Yeah.
But with those rare exceptions, like, there's no reason that you know, if you're 25 years old or 30 years old or 35 or 40 years old and you start dating somebody and you're like, man, I'm gonna, you know, date them for 5, 6, 7, 8 years, like, you're wasting your time.
Yeah.
And if she lets you waste her time like that, like, that's a whole different discussion. Because if she knew her value, she ain't gonna let you get away with that, right? Like,
Yeah.
absolutely not. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. But it's, you know, that's the thing, is like, it's not coming from a place of like, I'm just randomly making stuff up. You know, if I can figure my stuff out in 2 years, you know, and not to say it was easy by any means, but, you know, complete life 180, a couple, you know.
Yeah.
Now, granted, I did start figuring out other parts of my life and myself, you know, a couple years prior to that, and started on that journey. But that's, you know, when you're talking relationally, this is basically when we got together. Because, you know, from the time I split from my ex to the time you and I met, it was a rotation. Like, we've talked about this, right? And not
Yeah.
that I'm proud of it, but it was, you know, like, every couple months there was a new girl, like, you know, and it was just like this rotation that occurred. And, you know, looking back on it, it was pretty stupid. Would I do it again? Probably not, you know, but it also, you know, in our previous podcast, we talked about, if, you know, you asked your partner when you first started dating them on date one, you know, what did you learn from your previous relationship? I can honestly say every girl that I was with for that couple months, like, I actually genuinely learned something about relationships.
Mhm.
You know, was it the best knowledge or the best way to acquire it? Probably not. But I genuinely learned something and was able to piece things together of like more and more and more and more of like understanding stuff. And then, you know, in a way, actually putting things to a test, right? In a way of like, well, if I do this, how does she react? Well, if I act like this, how does that make her flourish? Or like, you know, I mean, all those things. And
Yeah.
I mean, I was always honest with them and tell them, hey, you're only going to be around a couple months. It is what it is. Like, you know, so at least I wasn't like, hey, I'm going to marry you. And then 2 months later, okay, time's up.
You never told me that. We also never had the discussion about what we were, though. So there's that.
I never told you what part.
That I was only going to be around for a couple months.
Oh, that's true.
Actually, in the beginning, you would tell me all the time, you better stop doing this or you're going to get stuck with me. And I was like, oh, okay.
That's true. And I did tell you that up until then, it was a couple month timeline. So there was that.
You didn't tell me there was a couple month timeline.
Not to you, no. No, I said, but prior there
Oh.
was. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Hoes do hoe things, Jerry.
Call yourself out.
Is what it is. I mean, can't be honest about it. What are we doing? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, you know, it's crazy because like you talk about even like pastors though, right? they, you talk about that all the time, and like you'll never meet a pastor that's like, oh yeah, I just grew up as, in the church, and I had this perfect life, and I married my high school sweetheart, and everything was unicorns and rainbows, and everything was perfect. Like every single pastor I've ever met in my life, the good ones at least, are like some crazy backstory, like
Yeah.
they've been through some crap, crazy stuff, getting arrested, drug addicts, like all kinds of stuff, and like, well, and then they found Jesus, and here we are, right? Like, but that's kind of the same thing about anything in life. Like, you don't ever get good at something by just like picking it up one day and now you're good at it, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I guess there's prodigies that do that with piano and weird stuff, but for the most part, I mean, major things in life, like you're not going to get good at it without practice. And a lot of that practice comes from your failures. What did you learn from those failures? And relationships are no different.
This is true.
On
I
that
had a
note,
really good thought about like something else, but we're getting kind of lengthy in our time here, so I'll save that for
it's because I'm trying not to die over here today. So
yeah.
I'm long winded today, folks. All right. On that note, I think that's our homework for this week. Go figure out what covenant means to you. Even if you're married, if you are married and you have not wrote down what covenant actually means to you,
Or thought about what that means to you.
yep, let's go do that
Yeah.
for sure.
I think there's a lot of people who haven't ever really thought about that. And if you don't know what a covenant is, go do your research,
Yeah,
figure it out.
for sure.
Well, on that note, we will talk to you guys later.
All right. We'll catch y'all on the next episode.
Bye, guys.